Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
Well, welcome to Relationships Inside Out, where today we're going to be talking about prioritizing relationships. This is a topic that's been peppered through other podcasts we've done, but it's coming up a lot lately, especially after the holidays. So we wanted to give special attention to this today.
In relationships, when we look at it, we're not just talking about romantic, but how do we balance out prioritizing our romantic versus our parenting relationships versus our family relationships versus friendships, like all the pieces.
Wait, boundaries? Is that too soon to say this?
They're my love.
But listen, I mean, so I'm going to put a little emphasis on the romantic relationship.
Yeah.
And we talk about prioritizing relationship. I see this goes by the wayside with a lot of couples, right? Oh, we got kids, we got work, we got all this stuff, and you are busy. But what do you think that does to your happiness when you're not focused on each other? How do you think that affects your parenting if you're not a good team? If you got resentment and the only thing that's really there is you focusing on what each other's doing or not doing to support each other for the kids or job or other family, right?
Or I think about empty nesters.
Oh.
When your kids leave, because they will one day, hopefully, what's left? Are you guys connected still, or are you going to be looking at a stranger? Because your whole relationship can't be centered around logistics of the kids.
It's a great point. When I work with older adults and I see this happen because relationships develop a homeostasis based on your context that you've, decided upon, whether consciously or not. And for example, we're just going to work and then we're going to raise kids. And that's what you decided on. And then all of a sudden the kids leave, like you talked about, and then one retires or both retire. And now you're at home and now the homeostasis changes. The relationship was functioning based off those previous context, but now it's different. Do you have what it takes to manage that new place? And I see a lot of older adults who are having a hard time because they never really worked on each other or the skills to navigate that relationship. And now they're faced with it daily.
Think about COVID, when we were all forced to be at home with our partners.
Right.
We went from like, oh, I love my partner to I'm going to kill them. Like, I cannot do this anymore. Cannot be around them. They irritate the shit out of me because we aren't building that relationship. Yes, naturally, if we're around someone too long, it can be irritating. But we saw marriages completely fall apart.
Yeah.
Because of it.
And for me, and this is more of my own hypothesis, is, early on in the honeymoon phase, you're excited. It's new. You make sacrifices for each other, right? You tell friends, nope, I'm going to hang out with my partner or family. Like I'm going out. And then that changes, that shifts. You're no longer making that sacrifice for each other, whether that's just taking one day a week to go have fun and connect and not talking about your problems.
I think about phones. I work with a lot of couples, as do you, and often couples will say like, well, we don't have time. We don't have time to go on a date. We don't have time to spend time together. We don't have time to even sit in connection for 5 or 10 minutes. And I'll say, okay, get out your phone. Go look at your screen time count. And it isn't like 45 minutes for the week. It's hours. And I'm like, think about if you had not even all of it, just half of it, quarter of it, reprioritize towards your partnership, how different your partnership might be.
And I think that's a great task for the new year too, is how do we reorganize our time? How do we allocate it differently? Because the thing I continually hear, and I know you do as a clinician, we all do, is I just don't have time.
I just don't have time. But yet we have time for TV, to sit on our phones, to, I don't know, bitch about our best friend, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We have time for all of those things, but we don't create time for our partnership.
And the times that couples that I work with that actually go do this and they come back, it's different. It's a different vibe. They're more connected. There's more physical touch. Their body language is more turned towards each other naturally, right? There's more of a connection when they actually follow through with, we're going on dates, and they're able to navigate a little bit more of the negative stuff more effectively because now they have positive sentiment too. It's not just this, they didn't fill the baby bottle or they didn't take out the trash or what have you. It's now of, I had a good time with them. Like that felt good.
Fun. There's a dopamine and oxytocin hit that happens.
Yeah.
We bond, but it's got to be consistent, right? I'll hear couples say like, we went on a date last month. And I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
And got to go on a date more than once a month.
And you bring up a great point because I feel like when we talk about prioritizing relationship, the first thing people go to is like this big extravagant thing we have to do.
Truth.
It could be day-to-day stuff. At night, play a card game together.
My husband and I, my daughter got a Switch. A little bit of Mario Kart.
Yep.
It sounds weird, but it goes a long way.
I got a lot of couples who play video games together and it's wonderful. They love it as long as they're not like super competitive
and grouchy, but like
Yeah.
it builds teamwork. You get to play, you get to be silly,
flirt.
all the things.
Yeah.
Or even encourage, like, oh, great job there, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Anything where you can just have fun and it does not have to be like we're going out to the melting pot or wherever people go to. I have no clue. Like this big date you have to plan because that takes effort and energy. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
No wonder why that doesn't happen often.
And I hear kids being the big barrier, which I get it. Trust me, I have 2. I get it. And once they're in bed, do I sit on my phone? Or am I going to watch a movie with my hubby? Or are we going to play a card game? Or are we going to go sit outside and look at the stars or have our own dinner? You can have dates that don't involve really any money and don't involve having to get a babysitter and don't take much energy or effort. You can still be in your sweatpants.
Yeah.
Ideally, we're still giving it a little effort. But if you're like, I need to veg, choose to use that veg out time to be with your partner.
Wait, you don't go to sweatpants to the melting pot?
I mean, I might because stretchy pants are important for that, but
yeah, and I like the idea of finding something that's easily integratable. And you use important language there. You said I have kids, and what I typically hear is we have kids, or we would love to do that, but we have kids. And the thing is do you really want it?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't see relationships doing too well long term unless they both just sacrifice that is what it is. But it's not enjoyable and there's that connection's not there. But for the most time, I don't see it doing well long term when they're not prioritizing each other. They're not feeling that connection, that thing that they felt earlier on when they met each other. Because when stress comes in, child, anything else, those are the first things to go. And we've talked about that before.
Mm-hmm. And I think about, you use the word priority in there. I'll ask couples, like, what are your priorities? And they'll list what you're supposed to say. So if you're faith-based, God, then marriage, and my kids, then my work, then so on and so forth. And then I say, okay, now let's actually do a time study or a journaling of your time over the week.
Yeah.
Then we come back and look at it and see, what did you actually prioritize? It isn't going to be your marriage. I'm here to tell you.
Yeah.
And it can be earth-shattering for people of, oh, wow, like here cognitively, it is a priority, but in actual action, it's not. So how do we flip the script? Yes, you have to work. It is going to be a dominant force. Yes, as a parent, you have to show up. And as a partner, you have to show up. So how do we create time? What other things can we let go of, delegate out, shift, make even quality time? So if we're cleaning up toys, does it have to be serious and arduous? No. We can be playful. We can have a glass of wine together while we do it. For every toy we pick up, we can ask each other a question. Whatever it might be, we can build stuff in.
And the thing too is similar to your timetable. I have clients go look at their calendars. There is nothing relationship on there.
No.
Work, kids. Why not schedule stuff for your relationship? Yeah. Why not schedule stuff for your relationship? To me, that's not a like lower on the totem pole than kids and work.
But yet we book family dinners with our in-laws.
Yep.
Or, we have to go to this certain function or whatever it might be. But rarely do we actually sit down and we'll say like, oh yeah, I'm going to plan a date. I'm going to plan a date. And I tell couples, no, get out your phone now. We're going to plan it now.
Yep.
Because if you don't choose to plan it and prioritize it, it ain't gonna happen.
I do that all the time. We're doing it in session right now. Get out your phone or create a family calendar so you can both be on the same page. And even if that means scheduling spontaneous time, because some partners don't like this rigid schedule and always doing something. They want more spontaneity. So schedule that spontaneity.
You schedule what I call it flex time. So we know that Fridays we stay up a little bit later. So when the kids go to bed at 8, we have flex time till 11 or whatever. How do we want to use it? Do we want to get a babysitter? Do we not? Do we, whatever it might be, how do we prioritize that time rather than just playing solitaire or whatever it might be? And
importantly in this is maybe some couples are doing stuff together. But then the question becomes, is that filling your cup?
It's a quality.
So now we got to look at the quality. This is why relationships are hard, but they're very important because how you feel in a relationship transcends into parenting. It transcends into how you 100%. Act with other family members. When you're more connected, you're more of a unified front. And that's important, right? Because this is who you're going with through the rest of your life, ideally, through the shit with.
I laugh because I think about that of like, my husband and I are in kind of a tough spot right now with some family stuff. and I know he's got my back. And so when I'm struggling emotionally, when I'm
Mhm.
having a hard time, I reach to him. I'm not reaching to my phone, I'm not reaching to a glass of wine, I'm not reaching to anything like that. And that even helps build the bond.
Oh, absolutely. You want to feel supported.
Mhm.
And it's hard to want to support a partner that we only have resentment for because we
Mhm.
haven't spent time connecting and finding ways to appreciate them, right?
And that positive sentiment you were talking about.
Yeah. And Gottman talks a lot about that, right? John Gottman. The thing that that's important in regard to that positive sentiment is going back to that quality time piece. It has to make sense and feel connecting to
Mhm.
you. And maybe one time you do something your partner is connecting to them because it might not match.
True. And how do we balance that? It can't always be what I want to do or what he wants to do, right?
Mhm.
How do we try new things together? How do we both feel like the newbie in this room? How do we take turns? I also think about the prioritizing in terms of, and I'm curious about your perspective on this. When family lives close by,
Mhm.
how do we balance that? How do we balance that? We talked about with the holidays of family time with partner time and really prioritizing partner over, ideally, over some of these other extraneous relationships.
For me, I think the conversation that has to happen is, what are your values as a couple?
Mhm.
And are they showing up? Because, for example, maybe we have a partner that values extended family and they're very collectivist from that cultural standpoint.
Fair
It's not a
point.
matter of right or wrong, but understanding is that what's important to them. But in order to kind of really know what to do with that, we have to understand our values and make sure that we're putting them forth as a couple.
Fair point. And if I want my marriage to be that priority, we've got to hold that boundary too.
Yeah. And there has to be some flex, right?
Of course.
I have like some partners, there's always like one in a relationship, I feel. And they're like, this has to happen. No, there's no flexibility. They're very rigid in what has to happen to feel that. And it's like part of being a team and feeling connected and prioritizing the relationship is making it about the relationship and not just you. How do we meet you in the middle? How do we, adapt that a little bit to where this isn't? And of course, it is important to have both couples discuss what are the hard no's, right?
Mhm.
At the same time, is there any wiggle room? Is there any way to navigate that together successfully to where we can meet that, but also the other partner get their needs? Because sometimes those needs maybe take away from the other partner's ability to get their need met. Like
Fair.
my hard no is we're never seeing your family again or on Christmas or something. Well, that's important to me. Like I want to see my family for Christmas. That's a big thing. Nope, I can't do it anymore. Like, right, that becomes an issue.
And how do we find some compromise, right? It may not be in a traditional sense, right? Our traditional sense is that where my partner goes, I must go. What if it's, hey, I'm going to sit this one out, but you guys go? That can be okay. If you as a partnership can agree on that. It might actually be in service to your relationship, right? If one partner doesn't feel safe with the family or friends or whomever, and they feel safer at home, but still want you to go enjoy, you're not coming back irritable and cranky and in conflict, right? So finding even some creative solutions like that, or we're only going to go for a set amount of time or whatever it might be.
And in that, reassuring your partner you still love them and it's not that you don't want to be around them.
100%. Good point.
Because some of us have insecurities are like, you don't want to spend Christmas with me and my family. Like, do you not love me anymore? Whatever, what it might be. One note I want to bring up, because we've talked about it in press, but I want to reiterate it, is when you put boundaries up, it's not going to be easy to begin with.
No one likes boundaries.
You're going to get pushback, especially if you have a family member who has personality disorders or.
I tell people all the time, the people who push back on your boundaries are the ones who benefited from you not having them in the first place.
Yeah, that's great perspective. Yeah.
Which is so true, right? If we set a boundary and then people kind of balk at it, it's because they benefited from it not existing. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Now, boundaries are not equivalent to ultimatums. They are not equivalent to extreme rigidity. It is simply a way of saying, like, this is where I feel safe. This is where I don't feel safe. And here's my line. Here's where I can be flexible and compromise. And here's where I can't. But it must take in mind some perspective from your partner or perspective of the other people in the room. Doesn't mean you have to bend to their will, but keep in mind that it is not the same as an ultimatum.
Right. You said something to me before we started recording about parenting.
Mhm.
and a unified front, and how that shows prioritizing. I was hoping you can kind of actually share that.
We've bumped into this more times than I can count as parents,
Mm-hmm.
but also prioritizing our relationship in front of our kids. So what that looks like. Maybe my husband gives my daughter a direction and I'm like, oh, I don't agree with that. But it's not a safety thing. It's just something that we have a difference in. In that moment, I'm not going to call him out. I'm going to have his back. I'm going to be a united front or a team with him in front of our daughter. It shows that, nope, we're a team.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps with that, like good cop, bad cop, or well, I'm just going to go ask mom or whatever it might be. And I can talk to my partner about it later behind closed
Mm-hmm.
doors when my kids aren't listening. That lets him know that he's my priority, not my kids. Now, I hear that sentence and people are like, oh, your kids aren't your priority. Not above my marriage, they're not. That comes from my faith, my value system,
Mm-hmm.
that my deity is my top, and then my husband and kids and so on. So for us, that's a big one of having each other's backs. That shows up with our parents, with friends, right? I'm going to have his back ahead of any other person in my space.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't agree, we will talk about it, but not in front of everyone. Right.
And do you think, kind of like a follow-up question with that is, do you feel like there's times where it's appropriate to have conflict in front of the children?
Sure. I think conflict is great in front of kids. That sounds, again, a little weird, but kids learn conflict resolution
Mm-hmm.
skills from witnessing it, from example, not just by us telling them how to do it, but they can see that I can be mad at dad. I can be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I'm going to yell. Doesn't mean I'm going to put them down. And they get to see us make resolution or make up. So they can see how we go from angry to, okay, I can see your point, or I'm sorry, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And that's different, right? Because then when the argument's about what you've done with your children or
In
the
terms of
parenting, then behind closed doors, unified front.
Yes.
Yeah.
At least in our house.
Yeah.
Like that works for us. And especially because our 5-year-old is smart as a whip and she picks up on any discrepancies between the two of us. And so holding that boundary, that prioritization of my partner really helps with that dynamic, and it helps him feel supported. With my training, he often defers to me for parenting decisions, and I want him to feel comfortable and confident making those decisions too.
Yeah.
Because just because I'm trained in this area doesn't mean he's not a competent parent. He's equally as competent. And I want him to feel that too.
Oh, you mean you don't hold it over your partner's head that you got a PhD in?
I mean, depends on the fight. No, I'm kidding. Every time I apply a Band-Aid, I'm like, excuse me, doctor's here. It's like, glad it's going to use.
So important. I think what you're saying is really important, because now we're talking about, do people have different value systems that I would say guide what's a priority?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to reflect on too, in a relationship, is what do we want to be our priorities? Where do they lie? And how are they showing up? Say the relationship isn't the top priority, which, that's not my value system. I feel like that is like the core, and everything else outside of that is affected by that. However, other people might not feel that way. So just evaluate. If I'm prioritizing, say, kids over this marriage, does my marriage still show up and get attention?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it now we're just business partners in managing children?
And can I accept the consequences of those priorities? That's true of any priority, right? If we're prioritizing something else is lesser than. Can I accept the consequences of what I've now made lesser than?
Yeah.
If you choose that for your marriage, cool. But can you accept the consequences that might come?
Yeah. Which could be this not feeling connected, not feeling appreciated. I can't tell you how many times couples are so willing to tell each other what's going wrong and what they're shitty at, but not what they appreciate.
Even things like, hear me for those in the back. Even if it's they put a dish in the dishwasher. Hey, thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Even if they put their own shoes away. Thanks for doing that. It costs you nothing to say thank you. Say it.
Mm-hmm.
Say it until you are blue in the face. Appreciate them, love on them, validate them. We take for granted that, yes, our partner's our teammate, and ideally they're helping with housework and kids and all the stuff, but it costs you nothing to say thank you.
Yeah. It's not much effort, and it goes a long ways because you're validating your partner's efforts. And I would say part of the conflicts that I see in couple relationship, one part of them is not feeling their efforts are noticed or validated or appreciated by their partner. So when we do, we're helping elicit that positive behavior that you're wanting, right? I make a joke. I'm like, you're just conditioning your partner to do the things you like. So
true.
Yeah.
If I'm not getting positive feedback, why am I going to put more effort?
Yeah. Can we say that again? Why am I going to put more effort if I'm not getting, how many times do you hear that in session?
All the time. All the time.
Why am I going to do that when this is not happening? Well, let's look at your side of the cycle. What's no appreciation? Maybe you're not soft in it. You're only talking about what they're doing wrong. So they feel like a failure. So they're helpless. Now they're like, what's the point?
What's the point?
What's the point?
We as people are inherently lazy beings. Some people would argue, no. But I really believe we as people are inherently lazy beings. And so by and large, we're not going to put in extra effort if there's not something that's going to come out of it, like validation.
The question always comes up for me in my mind for the couples is, why isn't your relationship a priority? Why can't we show appreciation?
In my head, it's time. I hear everyone, I don't have time.
Yeah.
You do, though. You do.
Well, and the other one I hear is, I don't hear it, but it uncovers through kind of work, right? Kind of the unacknowledged emotion, like this resentment.
Yeah.
Or feeling like they've failed their partner. So the hopelessness piece. And what's interesting is part of what's helpful for that is prioritizing the relationship to gain positive sentiment. So we only don't see what our partner's doing wrong.
That's why I like things that are play-based, even like video games. It sounds so stupid, but when your partner helps you out in the video game or whatever, being able to say, hey, thanks, or great job, or whatever. So silly. And yet, even just a little micro moment can be so powerful.
I appreciated that when we talked about this, you remained calm. I appreciated that you took accountability for your kind of role in this. Or I appreciated that you showed me appreciation.
I appreciate that you held my hand.
Yeah.
I appreciate they put gas in my car.
Yeah.
Well, they use my car. They should put gas in my car. Nope. That should. Anytime that should pops up, you know how I feel about this.
You shouldn't on people.
Oh, yeah. Quit shitting on people. Say it. It's not going to cost you anything.
Yeah.
Thanks for shoveling. Even if it's their chore every time. Thanks for taking out the trash.
Yeah. And granted, there is a balance. You want it to be genuine.
Of course. We
don't want it to be empty and like appreciate, because then it loses its meaning. But really an impactful of like, thank you, not like thank you, but look them in the eyes, maybe hold their hand, or when you're sitting next to each other, arm around each other, whatever it might be, like, I really did appreciate when this happened. It meant so much to me that you took care of this, this list I had. It was causing me so much stress. Like, thank you so much. Not this, thank you. Like when you're not even looking at them and you're like getting ready to go out the door or something, right? But meaningful, impactful.
Even shooting a text. If you don't have time because you're rushing out the door and all the kids and things, shoot your partner a text. Hey, thank you so much for X, Y, and Z this morning. I love you. I hope you have a great day.
Yeah.
It is so simple. It takes you 15 seconds, maybe.
Yeah. And not thanks. If you're going to do a text, it better be pretty elaborate, in my opinion.
Yeah. Thanks, period.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate you. Like, it meant a lot that you did that to me.
And I think in our brain, we pick it up differently if we switch up the language, right?
Yeah.
But we're used to hearing our partner be like, hey, thanks. We kind of brush it off.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But if we pause, make eye contact, say thank you or appreciation or I'm grateful for, that kind of language cues our brain a little bit differently.
Yeah. And granted, I'm going to be on it, like, acknowledge that I have bias of what I'd prefer. So I think people should reflect on what would work for you and letting your partner know, because we have to let our partner know what works for us too. We don't want to assume that they know and say, when you are showing appreciation from this really works for me. Again, we're not mind readers. They're not mind readers.
It's tough. And part of prioritizing isn't just about, I don't know how to say this, like what I want. Part of prioritizing is also making sacrifice on my end to make sure my partner gets what he wants or needs.
Wait, what? It should only be about me.
I know. It's a hard truth. Such a hard truth. But it is being willing to be flexible. I know you're going to be surprised. I have a hard time with flexibility.
What?
Shocking. And I have to coach myself through that. Sometimes my initial answer is to be rigid, but I have got to take time to think about it if I need to be flexible, to find value in what he values, even if I'm like, no, that's part of prioritizing, is showing him that I can show up for him even when I don't want to.
And I would say, you know, for most, if I look at it from like an evolutionary perspective, rigidity is kind of safe. Because if I'm rigid, then I have a little bit idea of what to predict what's going to happen. And being flexible is uncertainty. Uncertainty is scary. But predictability, like when I know that lion's going to come feed, like I know I can get away from it.
And us anxious folks, we don't like unpredictability here. Nope.
That's why I always found funny in the military. It's like very rigid, but adapt and improvise. Wait, what? wait, we're rigid. So am I allowed to go off of this? Wait, can I leave this or am I going to get reprimanded? Like, wait, what?
Talk about creating anxiety. Woo.
Yeah. So,
but prioritizing a relationship is foundational. It is pretty much any topic we've talked about. This is part of it. This goes into protecting our relationship from infidelity, to having good communication, to pretty much any part, right? Is showing up for my partner, saying I'm here and I'm going to try, even on the really hard and shitty days, I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
This is crucial to having a marriage that lasts the long haul, and not just lasts because we white knuckled or because we're too lazy to leave the relationship or whatever it might be, but one that we actually enjoy and get fulfillment out of.
And the infidelity piece came up for me as we were talking about this. Is, I mean, and there are a lot of reasons that infidelity can happen. One of the top is not feeling appreciated.
100%. And
so I think about the prioritization. It's like, okay, the priority is the kids. And you're like, okay, well, the relationship, we're not prioritizing. Then the partner doesn't feel appreciated. And depending, I mean, infidelity could happen. And infidelity isn't just like physical, like sex or whatever with somebody. It could be emotional, right? And then what does that do to the relationship? That adds stress. And then now that's coming off on the kids. I mean, to me, this is why the relationship is the core piece of this. One thing that I think is interesting is all the homework we give in therapy. This is the fun stuff. Go have fun with your partner. Go flirt. Go find a hobby together.
And yet it's one of the hardest ones to get people to do.
What the? Yeah.
I don't get it. I'm like, go on a date, go have sex, go make out. I don't care.
Yeah.
And yet it's the one thing that they're like, hey, this week, we didn't hug each other at all. And I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. But we wrote down our resentments or whatever it might be.
I told them they're a piece of shit.
Like, come on, people.
You never do this. This never happened. So we can't be together. Or like, the threat. Oh my gosh, the threats. So like for my wife and I, we know that, and she knows, but in particular, that she can get my undivided attention when we're driving because my little brain isn't all over the place. So we will find things to go do that take a little bit of time to drive so we can connect. And like one of the drives, we pulled out the Gottman app card and we just went through one of the getting to know each other cards. And it was asking things like, what are your hobbies? Or what are your goals for this year? Is there anything that you want to happen in your life right now that's not happening? It doesn't have to be the relationship, but you're just getting to know each other and you're prioritizing that. And the amount of connection you feel is just incredible when you're kind of focusing on each other.
And that's important. So walking, driving, things where our brain gets to track something else can actually be really helpful. We find that walking therapy is one of the more effective types of therapy. And so if you're having a hard time sitting with your partner and eye contact and having that intensity, try going for a walk side by side or a drive side by side. That can be really helpful.
Yeah. Like not tennis where you're going to help the ball at your partner, but something where you can connect and you have that undivided attention, not with a screaming baby in the back of the car,
not with your phone. Oh, phones. But I'm also guilty of the phone thing.
I mean, we all are, unfortunately.
But phones are killers of this.
And even some of the research is kind of a digression from our topic, but even the research shows that the higher depression rates, because similar to like a drug, your brain is used to that stimulation on the phone, right? So then when you're looking at it, your brain is like, oh, well, you're already producing enough of these chemicals, so I'm going to back off a little bit. And then you don't have your phone. And it's like, oh my gosh, like.
I don't know how to sit still. I don't know how to relax because everything becomes more dull.
Yeah.
If I'm used to such a high intensity of stimulation, what used to be stimulating is not anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. So prioritizing your relationship. That's what I want everyone to take away from this is not just saying you're prioritizing it, but do it. Actively invest in your partnership every single day. not once a month, not once a week, every single day. What is some way I can show my partner they're my priority? What is some way I can share gratitude? I can connect. I can have my partner's back.
Even
every
when
day.
you don't want to.
Yes.
Not, this has come up a few times, and it's just coming to my head right now about the validation. Like, if a partner doesn't feel validated, they'll kind of like use that as a barrier. And for example, what I mean by that is, say the partner will say, "Oh, let's go do something like that. Do you know how much stuff I have to do around the house? I'm getting no help. And you want to go do what? Go do it. Find time."
And maybe then it's a discussion of, when we get back, let's teamwork this list.
Yes. I'm needing more validation of what I'm doing. Say that. Feel that.
Name it. We got to talk about it, people.
But prioritizing even when you don't want to.
Even when you're tired, even when you're kind of grumpy at your partner, even when the kids are driving you nuts, show up for your partner. Trust me when I say this is one of those long-term happiness keys that can be really helpful. Well, this has been Relationships Inside Out, where we talked about prioritizing your partnership or relationship. As always, if anyone has any questions or concerns or topic suggestions, feel free to email us at relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. And we thank you for listening.
Thanks.